dear students, welcome to another social studies session. Today we will be looking at our ancestors, the ethnic groups in Guyana. So in Guyana, we have different ethnic groups. What is an ethnic group? An ethnic group is a group of people occupying a common territory, have the same cultural heritage, speak their own language, and have common ancestry. The Guyanese society is made up of 6 ethnic groups, and they are the Amerindians, the Europeans, Africans, Portuguese, East Indians, and the Chinese. Now we will get into a brief history of these ethnic groups. The Amerindians. Amerindians are regarded the indigenous people whose foreparents came from Asian Mongolia during the Ice Age. Many of these people, they migrated in search of food and warmth. It is believed that they crossed the Bering Strait and arrived in North America. Some migrated to the West Indies, and others traveled to further south and settled in Central and South America. And South America is where Guyana is located. So, as they live in Guyana, they live in tribes, and they have not strayed away from their practices and so on. So they live in their own peculiar way of life. This is a map showing you how they migrated, where they migrated from. So right here, you can see Asia. This is the Bering Strait. This is where the ice bridge was located. So they came from Asia, straight along the way, and settled in North America. Come along this way. They went to the West Indies, Central America, South America. And these are the different locations they settled in. The Europeans. The Europeans came from the Netherlands, Holland, which is from the continent of Europe. They came to Guyana as colonialists for various reasons, some of which are they came to search for El Dorado, the golden city, to obtain products such as annatto, indigo, cotton, coffee, hides, etc. by trading with the natives, and the natives then were the Amerindians. They traded these stuff with the Amerindians. So they also came to spread their European culture, such as the language, religion, dresses, and more. They came to acquire new lands, to seek adventure, to prove the accuracy of geographical theories. They also came to test the newly invented equipment. And the final reason why they came was because of population growth resulting from economic expansion in Europe created competition for space. The Africans. The Africans came as slaves. They were captured and brought from the west coast of Africa. A small number of them came during the 1630s to the 1640s when the Dutch changed to sugarcane cultivation. The Amerindians were no longer proved an effective source of labor because of their small population. The Dutch cultivated sugar on a large scale, and this cultivation survived up to the present time. Many of them died before reaching Guyana because of the overcrowded vessels with limited food supplies. And because the vessels were overpopulated, it was overcrowded, diseases, many of them died from a widespread of diseases and so on. The slaves traveled through the dangerous Middle Passage before arriving on the plantation. On arrival, the cargo was advertised and slaves were put up for auction. They were thoroughly examined before being purchased. Families were separated with no hope of seeing each other again. On the plantations, the slaves were placed in barracks. The food of the slaves consists of vegetables, salt fish, plantains, and ground provision. They were also given little clothing to wear. They hadn't much clothes to wear and so on. So the conditions that most of them lived under, it was not a healthy condition. So the slaves, they were flogged, imprisoned, tortured, and these things. So as many of them, they worked on in the field, factory, and also they worked as domestic slaves. So the slaves, because of their living condition, they protested against these conditions of slavery. And rebellion was one of the form of protest, one of their forms of protest. In 1763, Coffee, which was a house slave, he led the rebellion in Berbice. So after emancipation in 1834, the slaves withdrew their labor and labor from the plantations. They bought abandoned plantations in such places as Victoria, Buxton, Pleasance. After slavery was abolished in 1834, some of them came to Guyana as immigrants from other Caribbean islands because where the others worked in the other Caribbean islands, the wages were lower than that of Guyana. So some of them came to Guyana in search of a better, salary, wage, as I should say. So after slavery was abolished in 1834, some of them, stayed and worked for wages, while the others, went branched off into other areas of Guyana. The Portuguese. So the Portuguese were brought from Madeira and Portugal, which is located in the continent of Europe. They came in the year 1834. They came as laborers to work on the sugarcane plantations because they were brought to help, the labor problem since emancipation. So after emancipation, slavery was abolished, the labor force on the plantations went down. Therefore, they weren't the Europeans weren't getting as much volume of items. So they went to Portugal and Madeira and the other parts of Europe and brought Portuguese. So in order to correct racial imbalance, immigrants were brought also from Ireland, Germany, Malta, but upon arrival, a majority of them died. So these immigrants were expected to work for wages. The East Indians, they were brought from the country of India, which is located in the continent of Asia. They were brought on the 5th of May, 1838. They also came as laborers to work on the sugarcane plantations. So keep in mind the laborers that were brought after the Africans, most of them were expected to be paid wages. The first batch of 396 East Indians arrived in Demerara and Berbice. By 1854, they were indentured for a period of 5 years. But by the end of this 5-year period, they were offered land instead of being offered passage to return, to their country. They were offered land instead. So those who left the plantation, the estates, went into towns and villages seeking jobs. Many of them enter by entering the trading business by entering the trading business, they challenged the Portuguese monopoly because after the Portuguese left also, they set up businesses and so on. So they challenged these East Indians, they challenged the Portuguese monopoly. And some of them became farmers eventually. And some of them became farmers and eventually got into rice cultivation. East Indians settlements include Helena, Boshlak on the west coast of Berbice, and Winslow Forest on the west coast of Demerara. The Chinese were brought from the country of China, which is located in Asia, in the continent of Asia, in the year 1853. No women came with the first immigrants. No women came with them. It was not until the year 1860 the first women arrived on the whirlwind vessel. So after the Chinese were also brought to work as indentured laborers on the sugarcane plantations. They were brought to help correct the labor problem since emancipation. Other batches came in the years 1859 up until the year 1866. So this period of Chinese coming to Guyana, this period was known as the heyday. After the indentureship period, in 1874, another shipment arrived from China, but about the year 1879, Chinese immigration to Guyana had ended. After the indentureship period, some Chinese immigrated to Trinidad, Jamaica, and Suriname. A few of these Chinese returned to China. Others who were lured by the incentive offered accepted to be re-indentured. So they accepted to, continue working. Some of them accepted to continue working for a further 5 years. A few left the plantations. A few left the sugar plantations dissatisfied with the low wages and poor living conditions. These turned to rice planting and business. So some of these Chinese turned to rice planting and business also. Chinese settlements were established at Hope about 30 miles up the Demerara River. In Georgetown, the Chinese opened shops and sold charcoal and shingles. Hope eventually became deserted and the land was leased to the Chinese Association. During the 1940s to the 1970s, many Chinese became not only shopkeepers and owners of supermarkets, but also merchants in the import and export business. Chinese owned laundries and restaurants and so on. Here we have a map showing the countries from which the immigrants and the Europeans came from. Take a good look at it right here, and you will see the material. This is where the Portuguese came from. Europe, the Europeans, West Africa, the Africans came from there. India, East Indians. Right around here, the Chinese. So this has brought us to the end of today's session. Please stay tuned for further details, further information on our ancestors of each ethnic groups. Thank you.